The town of Berlin. Country charm at the center of Connecticut.
Welcome everybody to Town Council special meeting. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
Councilor Angelica Stesson. Here. Councilor Giannoni. Here. Mayor Kaczynski.
Here.
Councilor Luddy.
Here.
Councilor Pagliaro. Here. Councilor Payanessa.
Here.
Councilor Rosso.
Here. So, we'll start tonight with our audience of citizens, and if we can have Jerry Paradise first up, Board of Finance. I know you want to present it officially to us, so might as well start with you, right? Otherwise, we have nothing to talk about if you don't give it to us. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I am here tonight on behalf of the Board of Finance to pass on to you the budget as approved for the fiscal year 2020. Overall, the budget calls for a Board of Education budget of $44,877,844, which is approximately $1.3 million more than last year, about a 3% increase. The original request by the Board of Education was reduced by $1.3 million. The general government portion of the budget is $46,433,463, an increase of $2.21 million, or about 4.7% from last year. Debt service and transfers accounted for about $1.3 million of this increase. The total budget comes in at $91,311,307, about a $3.4 million increase, or about 3.8%. This budget was compiled after many hours of discussions and with input from the joint Town Council, Board of Ed, Board of Finance meeting several months ago. We also considered input from the citizens at our budget workshops and from the public hearing last week. Just a couple of the items to point out. The town side of the budget maintains existing services at current levels and adds one full-time position, which is a badly needed full-time IT director. I think everyone agrees that our IT function needs to be consolidated and updated. The V&A department continues to struggle financially. The department is very well regarded in providing services and has won several awards. Financially, however, the V&A is budgeted to lose $800,000 this year. We were informed by the town attorney during our deliberations that we could not make substantive changes to their budget. We have instead included in the budget monies for the town manager to hire a consultant to review the operations of the department and make recommendations to improve the financial results. Several months ago, a joint meeting was held with the Town Council, Board of Education, and the Board of Finance to determine the budget priorities for this budget. The single message coming out of that meeting was that school security was top priority. This budget includes the monies to finish the school vestibules project and to hire security guards at the schools. The amount included in the budget for the security guards was based on discussions between the mayor and the superintendent of schools. The capital budget has been reduced only to provide for those items determined by the town manager to be of a high priority. Many of these items relate directly to public safety. The Board of Education budget was reduced by $1.3 million. We believe the Board of Education is adequately funded at this level. Thank you, and I wish you good luck on your portion of the budget deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, so this is the audience of citizens, so whoever else wishes to speak, this would be your time. So anyone wants to Yes, sir. Yes. Just, yeah, you just have to come to the mic and give us your name and address, sir.
Yep, my name is Phil Dukowitz, address Orchard Road in Berlin.
Hi, Phil.
And I just felt compelled to come here and put in a good word for the library because I've been using it so much lately. I'm impressed by the quality of the library, the facilities offered, and the helpfulness and expertise of the people working there. So I think it's a good thing for the town, and I'd like to see it continued and not cut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Emmanuel Ford. I live at 203 Hillside Road in Kensington, and I would just like to echo the words of the gentleman who spoke before me. The town library is a cultural treasure of Berlin, in my view. They've been extremely helpful to me. I was not born into the computer age, but they have been very helpful with me with computers and in getting books that are not available in the library. They could not be better, and I just hope that you will be able to support them as much as they support us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ellen?
Not my words.
Sure.
This is from Kelly Doherty. She lives at Peter Parley Row in Berlin. I need my glasses, sorry. I am unable to be present for tonight's meeting, but was hoping you could read this on behalf of me as a lifelong Berlin resident and avid adult workshop attendee. Dear members of the Town Council, I urge you to reconsider any further budget cuts to the Berlin Peck Memorial Library. As a lifelong resident of Berlin and avid adult workshop attendee, I have come to rely upon this wonderful library to provide free and/or affordable services to me and my family over the years, and to be open after normal business hours. I work full-time and have very limited time to stop in as it is, but appreciate the variety of hours offered, especially the evenings and Saturday hours. Additionally, I very much value and participate in the free evening adult workshops, of which I would not be able to attend if they were fee-based or cut for budgetary reasons. In the last year, thanks to these programs, she's learned a lot. Wait a minute. I've learned how to detoxify my living space with natural cleaners I can make affordably at home, having begun using essential oils for my overall health and well-being, which has also evolved now into a blossoming side business. Having learned how to take better care of myself using a holistic nutrition approach after having attended a presentation from a local naturopathic physician, I've learned how to preserve my old photos and videos by using the library's new digital technology converters, and have been afforded the unique opportunity to travel along the Pacific Crest Trail, a trail I didn't even know existed 2 weeks ago, vicariously through the very captivating storytelling of author Anne Elizabeth O'Regan, a presentation I was fortunate to attend just last week at this engaging library, which has actually inspired me, a non-camper whose athletic prowess is still very much in the prenatal development stage, to actually consider walking more than just a few miles on a paved walkway in the woods, to hiking some trails recommended by the author, and eventually one day possibly travel that same 2,650 miles along the Pacific Crest Trail. Never would I have expected my life over the last year to be so influenced by this library. Sometimes that gem of a place you've always come to rely on since you were a child, as the Peck Memorial Library is to me, can be overlooked and taken for granted when latest trends occupy our minds. but the creative attempts by the library to re-engage me this past year with free enrichment workshops has definitely worked, as it has not only helped to re-engage me, but also my mother and a few family members who have come as our guests. I genuinely know that to cut the services already provided will severely limit the hardworking staff's ability to be as creative in their program offerings and will stifle member engagement and will ultimately limit the impact of the health of our community. I urge you to pass the proposed budget as presented by the library staff. Thank you for your time and careful consideration on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else wishes to address the council at this point? Mr. Tenza, how are you? Good.
Matt Tenza, 25 Ridgewood Lane. I'm also the Board of Education President. I speak to you tonight following the presentation by Mr. Paradise. While they think we're adequately funded, the Board of Education would disagree. I'd like to just reiterate things that we said at the Board of Finance meeting, and that is we have already reduced significant line items in the budget based on the $1.3 million cut. We have 6 teachers already coming out of the budget. We're taking a program, the ESS program, once again out of the budget, which is a 4-year program that we continue to try to get into the budget, but because of funding, we are not able to maintain, and then we wait till the end of the year hoping that we are able to find and allocate the money from savings throughout the year. The superintendent has agreed to reduce another $100,000 out of daily operating things such as supplies, textbooks, professional development, all of those things that bring value to the program. I just received my letter from Nutmeg TV asking why we're canceling. We're canceling as part of this, but also we do have the ability to do it internally with our high school television station, which is a good use of our assets. And we are also taking $400,000 out of the special education, transportation, and tuition line. And quite frankly, that is a roll of the dice. We know that those students are out there. We put them in as a placeholder because our Linda Holian, our pupil services person, has already pretty much identified those students, but we are taking the risk at this point in order to not reduce other services to our students. We understand that if there are additional cuts to the Board of Education budget, there are significant changes that we will be looking at, including more reductions of staff, higher class sizes, possibility of fees, athletics at the middle school and the freshman level, reduced schedules at the JV level. This is all right there. After 5 years now of average of 1.3% budget awards, we've already taken that support out. That's kind of behind the scenes, if you will. Put more on those folks, and this is where we are. So just want to make sure that you understand where we are as you go through the difficult task of what you're trying to accomplish. So, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else? We're still in our audience of citizens. Seeing no one, I will go ahead and close our audience of citizens, and we'll move on with our meeting agenda. So we only have one thing on the agenda tonight. That is the budget. That's why we're all here. I certainly appreciate all the comments. You all appear to take them all to heart. We understand the difficulty we are facing this year with our budget. We certainly understand the library is a gem. We know that. We know the school system is a great school system. We want to keep it that way. We know the town's a great town. We're trying to keep it that way as well. This year, again, we face, the biggest problem we face is our debt. The debt has been run up over many years. It's not a short-term problem. It's been probably about, going back 2 or 3 years, we were bonding $10 to $12 million a year. And in the last couple of years, we've tried to cut that in half and bond what's necessary. We've come up with a plan to stretch out our capital projects. This year, we're only bonding, I think, four projects, one of them being the fire radio system, which is basically failing. We need to fix that, as we had to fix the police radio system last year. Obviously, we're replacing the turf at Sage Park. That's well overdue. We have Burnham Street Bridge, which needs to be repaired. And we have the dam, the railroad dam by the post office, that has to be fixed as well. So very little bonding, trying to keep that debt down. We're just happen to be in that place in history where the debt is very high. It's about 12% of our budget. For a town our size, it should be about 4%. Every year that I've been on the council now, the auditors have told us the debt is just way too high. We should be somewhere around, maybe our budget now this year is about 90-something million. We probably should be around 40 million of debt, different projects, things that we have funded, So we're the second highest per capita debt in Hartford County. We moved up. I believe we were third last year, so we moved up to number 2. So it's a real problem. It's $11.5 million all in, I think, with everything in. That includes an underfunded pension fund that was not funded for many years. When we switched from the defined benefit plan to the defined contribution plan, there was nothing put in it for many years. We have tried to shore it up and put some money in the last 3 years. We still have about 14, 15 people in the defined benefit plan that when they leave, the option that was worked out, I guess when they ended it, was they can choose an annuity or they can choose a lump sum. They're all choosing a lump sum, which is doing quite a number on our defined benefit plan that has been underfunded to begin with. So that's kind of the situation we're in. It's very, very difficult. We're kind of at the height of the debt payments this year and probably next year. So that's $11.5 million that if we had that $11.5 million, if we had half of that money, we'd be really actually in pretty good shape. But we don't. So, it's very difficult. The Board of Finance has done a lot of work on it. We've all tried to keep up with it. I mean, the other thing that I hear a lot is we need more, it's not a spending problem, it's a revenue problem. Well, I think, obviously I think it's been a spending problem. But over the last few years, economically, we've tried to grow the town. I think we've done a pretty good job of it. We could always do better. Total over the last couple of years, we have about $32.5 million in investments from different companies that have moved to town. We've had, factory move from Rocky Hill. We've had just a couple examples. We've had this company called Steel Wrist from Sweden, and they picked Berlin as their North American headquarters. We have many other companies that have expanded. Budney Aerospace, the Acura dealership obviously moved to the Turnpike. Tom's Corporation is expanding. That's a $15 million investment in the town. And we've added about 355 jobs with those investments. And we have to come, we have obviously our TOD development that's coming by the train station. We have a couple other projects on the Turnpike that look pretty good with some mixed use, some retail, and some housing, all adding to our taxes, so to our revenue. But it's just with the debt and with the cost of things today, it's still not quite there. It's just not enough, and so we're working to always bring businesses to town. And like I say, we've been pretty successful in the last few years. But again, the debt's killing us. So that's where we stand. So we have to have some discussion here on the council. Tomorrow we have a meeting at the Senior Center. I know the Board of Finance had a meeting there, so we're looking forward to that meeting, and hopefully we'll have a good turnout so we can hear from our seniors directly and see what they have to say. They've been around a long time, so we always like to hear their comments, and we'll see how that goes. We have until Wednesday to make a decision on the budget, and then it gets sent to referendum, which the first referendum is April 30th, so we have to make a decision by Wednesday. A couple things that Jerry mentioned on the VNA. You know, the VNA, we have a very well-respected VNA in Berlin. The problem is it's just a very difficult commodity today. We've run, unfortunately, in deficits for quite a while, but now it just seems like no one was paying attention to it, so we have paid some serious attention to it in the last year or two. And we're trying to fix it. We'd love to keep it. We're really working very hard with it. We have a new director and her assistant, and you know, they have a lot of experience in the field. Obviously, the VNA is in our charter, so we can't just end it. We'd have to actually change the charter, but we want to keep it. So we're looking at ways to fix it. Councilor Pagliaro is I always get this wrong, 36 years of experience?
I'm really bad at math.
All right, close to that, whatever. Many, many, many years of experience with VNAs. She has stepped up and is working with Wendy and her staff to see what we can do to fix it and keep it and make it go in the black is what we're hoping. And if for some reason we can't, then we'll have to look at other options, but that's not what we really want to have to do. So we're gonna give it a year, probably into the year after, to see if we can turn it around. I think we're all on the council at least, and certainly the VNA optimistic that we could do that. So we'll be working on that. That's just a difficult thing to do. So the other thing is that we did set a priority with was the school security. That was about a year discussion. I think we had a forum at the high school, I want to say last February. And from that discussion with the public and other comments from the public and the school system and everyone, the council members and Board of Finance, really a lot of people got involved in it. We tried to work out a plan. We tried to come up with what we thought was the best plan for Berlin. We've done added a lot of security measures at the schools. We've added extra cameras. We obviously are working on the security vestibules, which will make our entranceways more secure. That should be completed by this summer. And then we came down to what do we do with the schools that do not have school resource officers. You know, we obviously have the high school with a school resource officer. We have McGee with a school resource officer, but our elementary schools are really left undefended, I guess, unfortunately, is what we have to say today. So we came up with a plan and much discussion with the Board of Ed, with the superintendent, town manager, police chief, the council here, myself. We came up with a plan to put a priority on that and to hire security officers, and much debated, not what we all really want to see in any town, but unfortunately the world we live in today, we decided to go ahead and arm those officers. They will be retired law enforcement officers that are already certified, and we'll start with hiring a security director, and then we'll go from there, and we'll make sure that our elementary schools are covered, and there'll be an extra officer probably at the high school to start, and we'll see how that goes. So it's not anything. We have budgeted $400,000. I think all of us, the Board of Ed, the Town Council, everybody in town would rather certainly spend that money on something else. But I think it's the reasonable way to go. I know the Board of Finance or the Board of Ed did a poll of parents, and I think we came back with 70%. People thought that was what should happen. And again, it's a sad state of our world today, but that's just the world we live in, and I think we have to keep our school students, our staff, and the town safe. So the Berlin Police, they do a great job, but they're not there, and other than the two schools that are covered with the school resource officer. And although response times may be quick, if that shift is busy, those first minute or two, if the worst happens, which we hope never does, we really would leave our schools unprotected in today's world. So that's not where we want to be. So that's unfortunately where a lot of funding is going to the different projects, as well as to the security officers. So that's another little drain on the budget. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We've worked very hard this year. The town manager, I know the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, to lower this budget as far as so we don't have a big mill rate increase. Last year we had, I think, a .80 mill rate increase. But on top of the revaluation, I heard from many residents, we've had a lot of tax appeals this year from residents that have come in, and they're not too happy with their taxes, as you might imagine. No one's happy with taxes, we understand, but we have services we need to pay for. So this year, we're down to about a 1.9 mill rate increase. That seems pretty high to me. Some of the businesses last year in town complained. Some of them had a 25% increase in their taxes. That's not a way to attract businesses in town. That's a pretty high tax rate. Understandable as a reevaluation, but I've visited some of them. Some of our biggest taxpayers are none too happy. Okay, so we need to try and keep them happy as well as maintain all our services. So again, it's a very, very difficult balancing act. So we're going to work on it here probably for the next day or two, and see what we can do. I wanted to throw out while Jerry and Matt are still here. Jerry, I got to ask you, while we're here, this is this discussion, so that's what we're here for, and the audience wants to join in. It's fine because we're all in this together. We're all residents, and we got to do the best we can. So I got a question for you, Jerry. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna. But so the one transfer that you did regarding the pension fund. Now the pension fund, as I understand, was in the budget. So if we reduced it, we could have reduced it against the mill rate, correct? And then we moved it to the unassigned fund balance, right? I think is where we moved it. Is that where we moved it to? Took it out. We didn't try. You just took it out. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And just to clarify, I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the entire Board of Finance.
Okay, then I understand that. I understand.
But you have a specific question that I can answer, so.
Yeah.
I
know it's not a joint meeting. It's just you're here presenting it to us.
Yes.
To you. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
The item was taken both out of the expense side of the budget and out of the revenue side of the budget, so it had absolutely no mill rate increase.
Or decrease.
Or decrease.
Right. My thought on that is in some discussions with Mr. Delaney, and although we're trying to fund that and we have put a lot of money into it, and looking at, I forget the balance that's in there now, and I know we're looking at probably at least a couple of retirements.
I think there's 1.6 million in there
Okay.
right now.
And what did we take off the table? 1.4?
1.3. Yep.
Yeah. So that was a place I was going to look to reduce that payment a little bit. With what we're facing.
We left in there the $200,000, which is the payments to the annuitants
Right.
in the plan.
Right. And I guess that's something we could reduce since we still have the budget, right? Still on the budget. Kevin, right? Sorry. I gotta utilize all you guys, so we want to make sure we're all on the same page. It's hard to get there with the budget. It's very complicated.
Yes, you could reduce it.
Yes. I don't feel that's enough. So my question is, I know you can't speak for the board, but I don't even know what figure it would be above the 200,000, but that's a place that I could see us reducing the budget, not hurting anyone, and being able to reduce the mill rate without, some other perhaps substantial reductions or other reductions. And that, I've been speaking to Matt a little bit about his budget and his problems, and we all have problems with the budget, town side, Mr. Healy, of course, all of us. So I don't know if that's something that you could bring back to the Board of Finance as the messenger. Understandably,
Sure.
you can't.
I think the when you say reduce it, you're talking about reducing the expenditure side, but leaving in the fund balance side.
Correct.
And our concern is when those payments then have to be made, there will have to be an additional appropriation from fund balance. So we'll be hitting fund balance twice.
Maybe.
Well, the annuitants we know have to get paid.
if we need additional payments this coming year, correct?
Yes.
I mean, other than what we think is, I guess we know of two that may retire. One definitely, I believe, has to retire. And I mean, anybody could retire. There's 14 people. We obviously don't know how many people would step up to retire out of that retirement fund. But it's just a thought. Just a thought I was thinking about and discussing with Mr. Delaney a little bit. And I mean, we'll certainly let the council members speak to whatever they all want to say. But it's a place that, one of the few places I could see what's left of the budget that we perhaps could reduce that item against the mill rate increase and still be okay.
If I might,
Yes.
I think it would be good to hear from our finance director.
Absolutely. Oh, yes. No, we will
on-
hear from Mr.
on
Delaney.
the overall impact
Yes.
on fund balance and how it's viewed from the rating agencies and the financial advisors.
Understand that.
You mind if I take a couple
Yeah,
minutes?
absolutely.
While we're on the
Yes.
benefit plan?
Yes. I would like you to do that.
You can pass these down.
Yep.
Do you still have yours, Jack, or do you want one? There's a lot of numbers on here. Maybe if we can start on the backside first.
Okay.
This is kind of, I think, in a level set where we are. The top part shows what was included in the budget. Just for historical perspective, the pension plan we're talking about, the defined benefit plan, covered quote-unquote town employees, which included the police department. In 1987, it stopped accepting new employees with the exception of the police department. Beginning in 2000, no new police officers were enrolled in this plan. The entire program has shifted to a defined contribution plan. So we're about 19 years removed from the end of new employees in here. Prior to 2005, I couldn't even find a line or anything in the budgets referencing the pension plan. You can see the funding levels through the years. In 2015, the town had a surplus. The budget was $700,000, and then a supplemental appropriation was made to try to beef up the plan, if you will. And then a return to $700,000. The last 2 years, the council, and last year the Board of Finance as well, funded what's termed as the actuarial determined contribution. We hire an actuarial firm to actually review our plan, review all the members, look at mortality tables and calculate the liability, but also tell us how much you need to fund based on the current funding status, who's in your plan, their characteristics, how much should you put in the plan. So for the last 2 fiscal years, including the one we're in right now, the actuarial determined contribution was funded. It is a substantial increase in the amount of funding, no doubt about it. Candidly, had we funded about $500,000 a year more, which is in the neighborhood of 0.2, 0.3 mils, all through those years, we would be essentially fully funded right now. We wouldn't be having this discussion. We didn't. So that's kind of a historical perspective on how we got here and why the number is so large. The budget as proposed called for fully funding the actuarial determined contribution, which is where the $1.54 million came from, and assigning fund balance. The idea behind that, as has been the last 2 years, is I'll take credit or blame for that because I'm the one who put it in the budget. It didn't seem fair that current taxpayers, individuals and businesses, should be saddled with paying all of the historical costs. And to give you perspective on this year's $1.5 million, $120,000 of that is what's called normal costs. So essentially what people have earned this year. So over $1.5 million, 120 is what's earned this year. The balance is what has been unfunded or underfunded for many, many years. So the idea behind the process was put up fund balance, which is essentially a piece of our savings, pull that back out to fully fund the pension plan. And then we took steps during the year, aggressive expense management, being more proactive with tax collections, including a tax sale, being much more stringent with banks to maintain a strong collateralized position so our money was safe but also challenging because we had banks that were offering us interest rates of 0.3% to 2.3%. And we simply said, we're not going to leave the money there for 0.3. A couple of banks, we pulled the money, others stepped up. So it was ways to try to fund that money so we didn't actually use that assigned fund balance. We've been fortunate the last 2 years we didn't actually have to use it. All of these efforts generated sufficient money that we funded the pension, and the assigned fund balance has been there, so we've carried it forward from year to year. The uncertainty in the marketplace with interest rates, the Fed is now talking about potentially cutting rates. I don't know what's going to happen there. Tax sales are beneficial to the town, but it is a short-term benefit. When you first do it, you typically get a bigger bite because you have a large number of long-standing, outstanding taxes. As you collect those, they go away. Somebody who hasn't paid their taxes in 8, 9, 10 years, once you collect it, they're caught up. It's no longer out there. So I still believe in using the assigned fund balance, but there was concern in having the discussion. The Board of Finance decided that it was more prudent, and rather than putting it into the budget, to put it into, basically return it back to fund balance, and then I will request an appropriation when necessary. So I want to be very clear to everybody. The money, the idea behind it is the money is there. If people retire, if we need the money, I will come to the council first, and then the Board of Finance, and ask for an unbudgeted appropriation in the middle of the year. We will honor the obligation to every member who's in this pension. We will pay what is owed. Second box down below just gives you a little snapshot of the demographics. Those who are in yellow, you can see that the assumed retirement date was 2018. That essentially means that our actuaries are telling us these folks are going to retire. You don't know when, but you have to assume they're going to retire. And the person in green is the required retirement. So if you look, beyond that, you start to get into 2020, 2023. These are folks who the age and number of years of service combination don't make them eligible today, but within the next couple of years will be eligible. If you take just the yellow, just the ones the actuaries have assumed, our liability at July 1st, 2018, and so it's going to end up being a little higher than this, is $4.1 million. 1.5 is based on the actuarial determination and the way the plans work. They're not expecting all of those folks to retire. But not having that $1.5 million is a pretty sizable risk for the community to take over the next fiscal year. If you flip to the other side, I'll point out just two things here because I know there's a ton of numbers. First is the box at the bottom right. I would never suggest that you would manage the community to a bond rating agency, but rather the rating that the agency gives you is indicative of how we're running the community. If you were funded at 90% or more, you'd be considered a strong pension plan. We have communities in Connecticut who are over 100%. If you were at 60 to 80%, you're considered below average. Anything below 60% funded, and there's always an argument of 60, 70, 80, what's the right number? But if you take the low end of what professionals would say, it's 60%. Below that, you're considered weak. Our audited financial statements and our actuaries at the end of fiscal year 2018, our funding position was 0.8%. So basically by any measure, we were generously underfunded is a word. You could effectively say we were insolvent. Not at all where we want to be. The other things I will draw attention to are the two boxes just above, assuming ADC is funded, assuming ADC is not funded. And I'll draw your attention to the last two lines. The good news from this, as compared to when I first joined a couple years ago, if everybody were to retire at once and we just had a mad rush and had to come up with the money, if we fund the ADC this year, if we actually leave the money, whether we leave it in unassigned fund balance, assigned fund balance, or in the budget, we could fully fund all of those payouts. It would drain 58% of our unassigned fund balance, but we could meet that need. If we don't fund the ADC and we don't leave the money there, it would use 71%. I say it's good news because we've worked over the last couple of years to pay this down, to pay out retirees, and to strengthen our unassigned fund balance. We can confidently say, barring a major disaster happening that would drain it, the unassigned fund balance is sufficient, that we could pay everybody. So as difficult as the situation is, the ultimate backstop is we do have the money if we need to pay it. But it is also one of the reasons why I safeguard the unassigned fund balance and basically am a pain to everybody who wants to spend a penny that's not in the budget. Because without this, we could be in trouble. There's folks who have approached me and say, why don't you bond this? And I know we talked about bonding earlier. Just to be clear, first of all, in Connecticut, you can't just issue pension obligation bonds. You have to request and receive permission from the state treasurer and secretary of OPM. First and foremost, you have to get permission to do it. Second, should the town choose to avail itself of that, the statute also requires that the council adopt an ordinance fully mandating a full funding of the actuarial determined contribution. So we're talking about fully funding it. If we were to go down the debt path, you would have to then pass an ordinance requiring you to do what you've done the last 2 years. So that wouldn't be terrible, but it would mandate that you would do it. And then there's a series of tracking and a series of levers. For a community with a strong rating, with a strong unassigned fund balance, with a recent track record of funding the ADC and paying out for retirees in the last 18 months without coming back for an unassigned fund balance, I hope from all of this, you'll understand, I'm urging you not to use that money. I think it's necessary, not just prudent, but necessary for the town to continue to have the ADC set aside to fund it. And we do see a light at the end of the tunnel. You can when you look at the chart for the ages and the people who will be retiring, 11 of those 13 are police officers, so there's other operational issues that come with it. But there is an end to this, and we will work through it. But I think we do need to continue to be diligent in funding the ADC.
Well, thank you for that. We all needed that, and that's good. That's great. Again, we're paying for the sins of our fathers here from no funding for how many years? There's 0 at 2005, so that's sad, but that's where we're at, I guess. So we're trying to fix it. We just can't fix something from 2005 in 1, 2, or 3 years, but I know we've been trying, so that's where we sit on that. So that was just a thought off the top of my head for something that we had been discussing. And so I'm glad you're here to explain it to us. And yes, yeah, John.
John?
Yeah, you just got to come up. I'm sorry.
One of these? Unfunded liability. Yeah.
You said some of the yellow ones are the subset.
Oh, sorry. That was
Correct. But the total is 6.8. Good evening, John Richards, Board of Finance, 239 Hawthorne Drive. The analogy that I'll draw first, and then I'll take it to this chart that was given you, is I used to work for the Travelers. I worked as an actuarial consultant. I am not an actuary, but an actuarial consultant to estimate future asbestos claim-related losses and expenses. For a long time, not equivalent to what we said before 2005, asbestos was deemed to be inestimable. It's just so big. How do we get our arms around it? It's a huge thing. But the actuarial community said, and the auditor said, that you had to put a value down. So the Travelers funded their asbestos liability, and we'll just use rough numbers. The numbers have changed. I haven't kept track of the yellow book for the Travelers in the 5 years that I've been away from there, but they had $2 billion set aside for future asbestos losses. When you set a reserve, you're supposed to set a range. Our range was 2 to 5 billion. So we would talk to management. As an asbestos person, I'm acting like you were just saying, why can't you give me more of the company's surplus to be in the middle of the range, because all of the other liabilities, auto losses, you're not allowed to be at the bottom edge. But because of asbestos, they would say, well, as long as you are within the range, albeit $1, then you're okay. In other words, being seen from the financial world. The company would prefer to keep the surplus, or as we say it in our world, fund balance, on their side, because they worry about catastrophes, wind losses, terrible things that could happen, hurricanes coming up the coast and wiping out all of their coverage in South Carolina. So they say, we'll hold it here, you've got enough. In the you've got enough for what the finance director is saying, we have enough to pay what we believe is the near-term horizon. But the part to look at, and I appreciate what Kevin was sharing, the part to look at on the back here is not just the sum of the yellow, but the sum of all of them, which is the 6.871. And I believe, Kevin, that's where you're getting the 58% if they all were to come. So our surplus could pay these folks out, but if they came tomorrow, we'd lose 58%. Along the way, the actuaries would like us to start funding towards that 6.871, which was in the budget, and we put back into fund balance. So we played like the corporation. We said, well, we'll leave it in fund balance because we don't know what else is out there, but we know that we can take care of A, the obligations that we see near term in front of us. We have enough funding there now. We have enough money to pay them all if they came, but we're really not where we ought to be reserve-wise. If we were to put the money in the pension balance, the 1.5 would have made sense. So we've already taken out as much as I think we dare to get back to this notion of how, if we had a rope between us, how much tug and war that we'd have. We know where it is. We know there's sufficient, so that should make us comfortable. But how much more would we pull back in? I don't think I would take another $1. And I thank you for your time.
I appreciate that, John. Thank you. Okay, so anyway, that was just some thoughts from me. So let's open it up to the council. So we're sitting here. We've got a 1.9 mill rate increase. What's the percentage? It's what's the percentage increase in our total budget? 5.8. 5.8% increase. 1.9 mill rate. I don't know, what is that? What did that equate to with a $250,000 house? What was it, $342?
$333.
$332. Let's say all of you. Who wants to go first?
I have a question for Kevin since we're on the pensions. How much was the state payment, or the teacher pension payment from the state this year? 130,000 or something like that?
Which would we make if that
No,
bill passes?
no. How much? Yeah, yes.
It's just under 134,000.
So we have this other unknown out there that could pass, and I think we have to try and figure out how to make sure it doesn't happen. Governor Malloy's OPM, Office of Policy and Management, wanted to towns to pay up to 30% of the teachers' retirement fund directly. And I think it was $8 or $9 million that the state pays on the behalf of Berlin. So at $9 million, 30% is $2,700,000, right? Something like that. And if it's the new governor wants to do up to 25%, that's $2.25 million, right?
He's proposing 25% of the normal cost.
Okay, normal
So
cost.
that would be just the current year.
Okay.
And that
Are we going to move up?
he would move to
up.
that point. So right now it's 7.5%. The proposal, and I will say, in fairness, it's in a big state of flux.
Okay.
The Education Committee passed the bill on Friday, but actually removed that element from it.
Good.
We've been working with the policy agencies. We work with COST, CCM to get their input. We've reached out to the speaker, but we haven't received specific guidance yet. Nobody's prepared to completely call that measure finished for this session. It could come back all the way up to the, I guess it's a term, implementer bill, when the budget's ultimately implemented. But you're right. So this year the proposal was fund 7.5% of the normal cost. Next year go to 15%, and by year 3 get to 25%, which would have the community paying about $134 this year. It was about, actually I have the exact amounts. It was 200. 134, 276, and then climbing to about 420.
Okay.
And then from there, one of the big questions that has popped up from a number of folks who are opposed to it is, once you start that, does it stop at 25% of normal cost, or does it eventually explode to the millions that you've talked about?
Okay, so they changed the language a little bit. Well, that's good.
Still,
We're still in that boat where we have to settle our budget before the state does theirs, and we have no idea. Thank you.
How much state aid cut did we get this year? Was it 393,000?
It was just a little over 300, but it actually is higher than what you had budgeted for. Last year, you'll probably recall, at the very end, if you remember, the speaker was at the meeting and talking about how the final state budget was being settled and how that was working. Essentially, the legislature at the very end was able to find funding and try to return some money back. And the Board of Finance elected not to include it in the budget that they submitted, and you as the council elected to move forward with the budget. So there's actually $670,000 that we are expecting to get in ECS money this year that is not included in the budget. So the town is down versus what the state budgeted, but it's actually an increase over what the town had budgeted for this fiscal year. So that's, I don't know if that's helpful or confusing.
A little of both, I guess. So, Jerry? Yeah. Okay, Jerry, you gotta, I'm sorry, Jerry. Oh, we're trying to make this a discussion, but we still have, it's a meeting, so you gotta come up, I'm sorry. It's all helpful discussion, though.
To your point about reaching out to the Speaker's office, communication today indicated that although that bill has been changed and moved on to the next committee, don't consider it a done deal till it's a done deal.
The teacher pension.
Yes, 134,000.
Okay. What else do we have? Questions for Mr. Delaney or for whatever we want to talk about, whatever you guys think?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So I've been a major proponent of the armed school guards and armed school security, and I still am. So please don't take my questions as wanting to change it, but we budgeted for $400,000 in the budget, and I was just wondering, I don't know if maybe you can answer or who, how is that $400,000 itemized into to make it to be 400,000? Can anybody help me with that? Like, how many guards does that include?
That was an estimate that was based on conversations between the group that we were meeting with, the superintendent of schools and myself, and it's an estimate of what the cost would be to hire 4 guards and a manager, and to arm them.
And is that an overestimate, conservative, just about right? Is there a discussion? I mean, there had to be a discussion on salary, right?
I would say that it wouldn't be overly generous, but I think it's probably, based on the information we had, about right, based on what we talked to other towns.
And does that include equipment also?
Yes.
And that, so, okay.
The intent, based on that conversation, was for the director, yes. The others, the intent was no, not health benefits anyway.
Or retirement. Right, they're just,
Or
retirement.
retirement,
they're just,
But we also include fringe benefits like social security and those types of things. Those would certainly be included as we pay them.
just hourly wage, right? Basically hourly
That was,
employees.
that was
right?
the intent.
And some of them, depending on what the certifications that they need, some of them may need to go back and get certifications too.
Do you want to weigh in, Matt, or no? Okay, sorry.
Right. Right. Other than the direct. Oh, yeah.
Hourly,
Yeah.
hourly employees?
Other than the director. The director is, yeah.
So
That-
hourly employees?
Yes. Yeah. That was what we've always discussed.
And they would be, if I'm not mistaken, would be required to be former police officers, correct?
By
Or
statute,
law
they
enforcement.
I think by state,
By
yeah,
statute,
whatever,
they
whatever
are.
the state statute says, yeah.
Part of a conversation we've had just recently that they have to be certified within the last year, and we're looking into that. So we may look into somebody, but their certification may have expired, and they may have to go back and get a certification. But that was a discussion that actually came up in a conversation today.
Questions?
I have another quick, I have a lot of different things here. I'll try not to ask too many questions. Are there any appeals of appraisals or assessments that we have to worry about? Or maybe in generic terms, you can maybe not name things if they're still being fought out, or?
BAA has completed its work.
Mhm.
So they're summarizing that information, and we should have that finalized very soon. But every year we do adjust for anticipated BAA adjustments. We have two larger lawsuits. One is moderately large. The other is quite substantial. The difference between what the town has assessed and what the taxpayer is, it's a business, so is looking for is actually over $1 million. So it is a substantial, and I don't mean $1 million valuation, I mean $1 million of tax income for the town. We've made an adjustment. We certainly haven't adjusted it down to what the taxpayer is saying, but we have adjusted. There is still exposure, but I would also say that depending on how that settles, there is also potential upside for the town because we've made an adjustment depending on how it ends.
What else? Questions, thoughts? Anything?
Said on a 250K house, it's $332 a year,
333, but yeah.
about 91 cents a day.
About $1 a day, yeah.
What else? Ladies, gentlemen?
I'm not a
Say it.
suspicious person.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But I see us talking about things that we said we wouldn't cut. I mean, if it's anything that we prioritized, it's school security. And getting a little nervous. I just want to know how you think we'll proceed from here.
With school security?
No, with the whole
Everything?
budget, yeah.
Well, I don't know. Tonight, what I guess, is I look at it, it's really the first opportunity we've had to, obviously, we have the final budget presented to us, although we heard the numbers last week, I guess. So we have Mr. Delaney here, we have Mr. Healy, we have, obviously the Board of Ed, and we have Jerry, Board of Finance, and John. So, this would be our question and answer period, is how I would look at it. I would also say that I wouldn't hope to make a decision tonight because I would like to, we have our meeting at the Senior Center tomorrow, so I'd most certainly want to hear, I hope it's a good turnout. That's why we did it tomorrow afternoon at 1:30, so we can hear from our seniors. We typically are unable to make it to our meetings, so I think that's important to hear from them, a large, obviously, group in town. After that, we have it on our agenda for tomorrow for deliberations, possible discussion, and our final day is Wednesday at 6:30. We have a meeting, so that would be the final point to make a decision, so we have time to send it to the referendum. We also have on the agenda, as we did last year, we can do, if we rejected the budget, we would go to a joint meeting with the Board of Finance. That's scheduled too, if need be. So, I've kind of left all the options open, but I thought this night would be really fact gathering, because I know all of us, I've had a lot of questions. I've talked to Mr. Delaney a lot myself, but I'm sure you guys all have questions and ladies have questions. So, we want to gather all our information before we, make a decision what we're going to do. Again, difficult year. So, really just I'm considering this kind of, Peter, of, more of fact gathering and answering your questions so we can have everything in our fingertips to make an informed decision.
So you're basically saying that you're not going to share with the minority representation on the council what you're planning on cutting tonight?
I don't know what we're planning on cutting, no. I don't know if we're cutting anything.
Okay.
We haven't made that decision yet. None of us have we? We haven't even discussed it till now.
Okay.
That's why we're having a public forum to discuss it. I mean, the only thing I talked about, I've shared with Mr. Delaney was this pension plan. But other than that, I'm not sure where to go, although I do have a question for Mr. Healy. I know I did ask you, or you did ask your managers to look at, the budget again. I don't know if you have any information or any other. I know the Board of Finance did that as well, I think, before they made their decision. I don't remember what happened with their, didn't they ask for some other reductions?
They asked for a reduction. Excuse me. They asked for a reduction, and they gave us some goals, if you will. And I think we when we presented, they'd given us a goal of $300,000, and there was different definitions of how we came with that. We provided a list of, and it was really 5,000 here, 10,000 there, off of things that we've increased in the budget because we need to. The cost of goods and services are going up. So each budget, when we went out to the staff, we asked them to give us a responsible budget, each one of them. We spent, I think, I don't know, a couple meetings with the Board of Finance, and we had some good lively discussion. I think Jerry and I said we had some good arguments there, right, Jerry? And I will tell you, they were all, used the term nickels and dimes. I don't think we can go back to that again. We are not comfortable. I am not comfortable going back to the staff and saying, "Give me $5,000 more." We're going to be to the point where if a drinking water fountain breaks at the school, we're not going to be able to fix it. So I've told Doug we can't do that. So to answer your question directly, I did go back to the staff, and we don't have a place to take it. I was waiting to hear from where the council had priorities. We don't have a place to take it that we're not going to impact services. I mean, some of the places we had, some of the places we talked about were the library, because that's one place we could look. We talked to the police. They have a retirement. We said, well, do we not replace that one policeman when he retires? But if we do that, that means probably that the SRO is going to go from the school back into the department. Anything we discussed, I'll be honest, has come up in your discussions tonight as a no-go. We talked about, Jerry made a very good point. I'll say, I defended very hard with the Board of Finance to get an IT director. Part of the discussion was, well, if you hire an IT director, they're going to want a budget. Well, we're already spending that money. It's just that we don't have a coordinator, a manager who coordinates that. Each department's doing that, and I think we had a very good discussion with the Board of Finance and said we need somebody to coordinate and bring that together so that we're spending the money wisely. We've talked with the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed, Brian has said that, he understands what we're trying to do, and they may, the idea was that we would work in concert with them. So we try to look at that.
Why, is there some discussion about an IT director being cut?
No, what I'm saying is I was asked what we talked about in staff. We don't have an IT director, but we're putting money in for one.
Right, no,
I'm going through my rationalization.
I don't want to see that on the chopping block.
I'm just going through
Got it.
our mental exercises today. We went through, we had a mental exercise on Friday, we had a mental exercise today. One of the things we talked about, and I know this would probably not a place you want to go, refuse always comes up. We said, okay, we're not going to go to saying we're not going to do refuse, but we provide $140,000 worth of rebates, to the Condos Association because they pay taxes, but they don't get refuse service. But we rebate them $140,000. Do we do that, or do you vote that out of the budget? I mean, that's one of the things we looked at. Again, it's the mental exercise. We talked about something down as low as $25,000 for leaf collection. I went down and see that one's something I went down. I talked to Mike Ahern. I said you can't do that because it's in the stormwater plan. We're responsible to pick up leaves so that you don't have nitrogen into the discharge. So each thing that we talked about things as small as taking the 2 grants, one from the Berlin Library, one from the East Berlin Library, of $3,000 each. And I know that's come up in I think each of my 3 years of doing this. We actually went to one, and Peter, to your point, we actually said, okay, did we fund all of the security guards this year, or do we start with a manager and then gradually fund them in? And we just looked at options, I'm putting them out there, because I need your discussion to tell us, everything that we do is going to impact. We talked about, Kevin's listed it here, do we not do Scalise Field? Do we not fund the fire radios this year? It saves $372,000 of bonding cost. I mean, not a place you want to go. So the other thing is, do we not, I don't have a number here, Kevin and I talked about, do we close one of the pools this summer? So those are the discussion items that we had. And the interesting part was everything that we thought about in our exercises as a staff, or something that tonight you've all talked about, and then I've heard all of you say that it's a priority to you.
It is. It's all a priority, but
It is.
fortunately we don't have the funding to pay for it all, but. So what else? While we're still here, discussion, questions, comments, anything?
I just want to say it's a very tough budget year. Every year is a tough budget year. But our taxpayers are getting slammed by the state. And I know $300 a year per household doesn't sound like a whole lot, but we're probably going to get hit with $1,000 or so per household from the state, and that's going to hurt people. So whatever we present to the voters, if it's not the bare minimum, they're going to turn it down, and we're going to be back here again making cuts we don't want to make. So try to work at something that they can agree with, because it's miserable, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's not getting any better. With the state, certainly, all pushing things down to the town. I'm sure they're going to continue to push things to the town and all the towns, unfortunately. And that's not going to be pretty. But yes, sir.
May I just make one comment?
Yeah,
As you're
absolutely.
going through this, I know you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about a multi-night exercise. If as you're going through it, you have questions, everything related to the budget is on the website. If you go to the finance section under budget, all the presentations from the town and the Board of Ed to the Board of Finance, as well as the presentation the other night at the auditorium. The capital plan is on the website, so I'm happy to talk with anybody about anything, but if you find you've got a question and you're not sure, everything is out there and available.
And I sent you that link. I think Alex had asked a question. I don't think I answered his question the way he was looking, but I did give you the link to that section on the town website.
The dashboard?
Yeah, the dashboard.
Yeah.
But that takes you to all of Kevin's information
I'm
is.
wondering if you were thinking about the capital plan.
That's what I was, yes, that's
It's
what.
under the finance section. I can email it to you, but
If you can, I was looking at it on my phone, so obviously with your phone, it doesn't work out as well as when you print it out.
Certainly, the capital plan has what, about 800 grand in it now of project?
About, yeah.
790 or something?
How much is budgeted for an IT director?
I think we got, Kevin, about $120,000.
well, that's salary with benefits. You're at about 162.
And do we have one now, so we're replacing the position or adding?
No. We don't have a person, but we are spending, we have an increased amount of IT demands. And what happens now is each individual department handles their IT, and like we're looking at the amount of security coming in that has a lot of IT demands. Doug Solik originally was going to ask for an IT person to work in the facilities group. We said we wouldn't fund it there. We would go for an IT director. We're looking at the building department bringing in software, the planning and zoning department bringing in additional software. We have business continuity that has increased demands on us. Just the door hardware for this building alone, which we're bringing in shortly, is going to have technology associated with it, because we're going to go away from the standard key to swipe cards and things like that. We're spending the money, so we just felt that we needed somebody to coordinate all.
Like the director would be hands on the ground, strapping
Yes.
their boots on and working just like the lower level IT, or would they be more of a
No.
assigning you work and
None of our top managers our people who are in office know this person's going to be out doing.
Field.
Yeah. We don't have the staff level to have somebody not do that.
Right now, our IT is highly fragmented. You will hear from different departments who are very happy with what they have. Others are not. But one of the challenges that we have is we're not able to bring it together. And until we're able to do that, it will limit our ability for further consolidations. The reality is, whether you're public sector or private sector, technology is the underpinning of not just how we operate, but how effectively we operate. It can either help you or hinder you. If you were to go down the path of not funding the IT director, we would ask that you would at least fund $25,000 so we could bring in a consultant. Our network, and I've heard this from members on the Board of Ed, that essentially the hardware that comes in to fund, to feed the entire network comes up the road right here. We have bought bandwidth, if you will, for things to move that is beyond what we use, and yet the network is extremely slow. We don't know why, and part of that is because we don't have the expertise in-house. And so that's part of what we're trying to do is bring in 21st century thinking and skill set, which is more networking, more cloud-based, less servers on the ground, and more about how do you connect to the rest of the world.
We've talked to, I think some of our procedures are really antiquated.
Yes.
Like alarmingly so. So I think
Mhm.
that's incredibly important that we become more virtual.
Well, that's the idea, is we become a virtual town hall. Most towns, you can now, you can go online and schedule a building inspector online. They show up at your house, and then they leave, and then you can look in they've uploaded your report. So one of the things we're looking at is being able to fund, be able to bring that type of software. So it's for our building department. The idea is that the IT director will pay for that. That will pay for itself, shortly. Just being able to do that. I have a concern that in the building department, all of our town building records are on paper. We've spent the better part of a couple of years doing business continuity in case of a disaster. But if something was to occur in the building department, our records would be essentially destroyed. And so we want to be able to take microfiche all of those, make those available. We want to bring it as the virtual town hall. That's what I'm used to working with, and that's what that's why we are very much defending and promoting bringing an IT director into the town.
Well, I can say that since I've been on the council here, this was kind of an idea that came up under Mayor Rochette and the previous finance director, when sent a letter out to the Board of Ed and the town that we ought to be looking at consolidating some of these things, but I think you need an IT director to do that. God knows they come in and do an assessment, and who knows which departments are not up to, specific security concerns. That would be scary to get private information out there, and we're not protecting it. So I'm in favor of it. It's long overdue. I mean, one of the phrases people have been used is you got to spend money to save money. We did this with the purchasing agent. I think that paid for itself almost immediately. I'd like to see more things get bid, but as we discover here, we have a lot of specialty things that there's not a lot of people doing them. But the purchasing agent was still a good idea, and I think the IT director is still, it's a great idea.
Okay. What else? Anything else this evening? Questions for Mr. Delaney? Audience participation? Always happy to hear. Anything else? You guys who are all here tonight trying to beat our heads against the wall and figure this out?
Yeah, I just
Yes.
wanted to say to the members of the Board of Finance that are here, when this charter revision occurred, you guys were charged with this budget process and making the recommendations that you do. Quite frankly, I once again think this is an incredibly responsible budget considering what we're up against. I want to thank you for putting in the incredible amount of time and effort that it takes to do this. I hate to see the Board of Ed being cut. I still feel like that we don't do right by them. I'm really dismayed to see that ESS is not budgeted. And, yeah, I'm just, I'm concerned about a lot, but I do want to thank you guys for putting in the effort that you do, and also the Board of Ed for everything that you do, and trying to come up with something on behalf of our kids. That's responsible, and I hate to see any cuts made.
Anyone else? Yeah, I know it's very difficult. I mean, certainly everyone puts in a ton of work. I mean, I you know, just to close it, I hear both sides of the apple. I mean, definitely we hear we want services in town, we got to pay for it. Of course, we all know that. But I also hear from the people in town that their taxes go up $300 or $400 a year. They can't go buy food. And I've heard from some of those people over the 3 years, and it's very real and it's very disturbing. They can't afford to stay in their home. So that's something that keeps me up at night because, yeah, some of us, $1 a day sounds like nothing, I guess, but $1 a day and $300 this year, $300 next year, $300 the year after, that's $1,000 on your taxes, you know.
With all due respect, I'm
Tolls.
not saying that.
Well, can I finish?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that, and that's not just from you. I mean, that comes out from the state of Connecticut. Oh, well, we're going to tax this. It's only $1 a day. It's another $1 a day here, there, and everywhere. And, you know, there are people on fixed income in Berlin. We all, you know, can't always afford what we think we can, and we don't want to hurt the quality of our education, not by any means, the quality of our police department, fire department, town services, anything. But, you know, at some point, there just has to be some hard decisions, and the Board of Finance certainly was placed there to do their job, and they did their job. But the rest of the charter states that it comes to the council, and I've talked to a lot of people about that. I say, you know, what do you expect from us? And they said, well, you know, we voted you in. We want you to make a decision. You know, some will, you know, will give me more information than I want. Some won't say much. They'll say, you do what you think is best. But, you know, so everyone, you know, I hear both sides. So, yeah, is a 1.9 mill rate increase for that $250,000 house. I know houses last year went up $1,000 in their taxes. Last year, $1,000. So another $300 or $400 this year. So where does it end? I don't know. I'm sure it's never going to end. We understand that. Taxes are never going to go down, certainly in the state of Connecticut for many, many years. But on the other hand, where do we hurt our services? We do not want to do that. We don't want to hurt our education system. So it's very, very difficult. I know you all appreciate that, all of us here, Board of Finance, Board of Ed, and everybody in town. But I think everybody understands. I hope not everybody gets all the information. But we will, I'm sure all of us up here will strive to do our best to do the most good for the most in town. That's the way I look at it, and, you know, that's just my personal opinion. Go ahead, Joanne, I'm sorry.
No. All I was going to say was, you know, I'm not implying that $1 a day, you know, doesn't hurt some people. I get it. I'm a single working mom, you know.
Right.
I understand.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying
Yeah.
3 kids on my own. I get it.
Yeah.
But, you know,
It's just.
you don't get something for nothing.
Nah, that's true too. I'm with you. Listen, it cuts both ways.
We live in a good town with an excellent school system, which.
I know. We're all on the same page. It's just what you know, where do we go? And we'll, you know, I think we'll continue the discussion tomorrow night. And like I said, I look forward to hearing from the seniors, and hopefully we can. We're gonna have to make probably some tough decisions.
The last thing I wanted to say is, you know, since 2013, every budget that I've been involved with, almost everybody got an increase. The budget's been going up. We haven't cut anything. We've cut the requested increase many times, but everybody's budget went up. Okay, so we're not cutting anything. We haven't cut anything. Nobody here tonight proposed to cut anything that I know of. It's just a discussion. And, you know, most of our fixed costs, the term I heard tonight was it's beyond our control. Well, we can't get arbitration reform. We can't get property tax reform, and that's the biggest driver of our budget. And the state is talking about things that we don't know what's going to happen yet. I tried to do some simple math based on just the tolls, and it'll be about $2,400 for my family. Because I drive to Stratford, my wife drives to Simsbury, and my daughter drives to New Haven. So another $300 on that can hurt. So I think we got to do the best we can and eventually get to the voters.
Short term aside, I think looking in the long term, I'm hoping a discussion we can have as a council as we look at some ways to save money in the future. And I know the VNA was mentioned, and I want to be fair to it and give them enough time. The Board of Finance, I think, was inkling to cut them. It's in the charter, however. $800,000 deficit is a lot. It's a lot. You know, so, you know, to me, you know, if something, it's, government shouldn't be in the business of business. And to me, if we're trying to make money off the VNA and we're losing 800,000, it's an issue. However, to be fair, we do have to give them the appropriate amount of time. And I trust that Karen knows what she's doing, and if it doesn't work, she'll probably advise us, you know, we need to cut bait. But, you know, that is one of many other issues we could potentially have as a town council moving forward to save money so that future budget discussions are a little easier. That's kind of what I'm hoping after all this, the dust settles on this, maybe we could sit down and, you know, like I remember when I first started on the town council, one thing that was brought up was an assessment of all town property. And whether we could look at what town property we have and assess whether or not we still need it and sell it. You know, that's something when the dust settles again, we can look at. And again, I haven't really thought much more about that, but I'm sure with all our heads combined, we could think of things like that. So I'm hoping we can have a fruitful discussion when the dust settles to address that also.
So I do have something now that you brought that up about the VNA. One of the things is I was very dismayed to hear that the census, they are doing the budget by a census of 80. That's not enough. We need way more than that to be able to be self-sufficient. The charter may have the VNA in it, but there would be no harm to any of the patients if we followed the COPs, or the conditions of participation, and the regulations that are through the Department of Public Health if it ceased to function, because we'd have to follow specific steps. Also, one of the other things that the Board of Finance did, which is really, I think, quite good, is they put in to have an audit of it, which needs to be. It was extremely mismanaged in previous years, and I do commend the director and her supervisor for bringing it up to regs, because if we hadn't, it could cost us a lot of money. But the other thing, too, is $800,000 on our taxpayers' back is not acceptable. It really is not. So they really have to prove to themselves next year that they can do better.
If this may come up within a year, should we have some sort of small line item budget for charter revision? I think we needed, I think the last time around was $5,000. Because if we had to drop the VNA a year from now, we'd have to plan this year.
Right.
It was included in the original submission, and the Board of Finance took it out. I don't believe by charter you can add it back in. I don't think you're permitted to add it back in.
Can we make a special appropriation during the year if we need it?
Find it, that's all right.
Absolutely. It would come to the council, and then it would.
I'm not saying we should do
Right.
anything to VNA. I'm saying, I just want to make sure the council has the options open if we need.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And just to be clear, the biggest expenditure for the last charter revision was really advertising. And the town has an advertising budget, so if we had to, we could utilize that advertising budget for that element. As I'm saying, it's the only one, but that was the biggest element, so we could figure that out if that's the path you chose to go down.
Yeah, we probably need to talk about that. I mean, you know, and we're all agreed. I mean, we can't be losing $800,000 on a service like that. That's, you know, awful, and glad we've identified it finally. I don't think it was identified for a number of years, so that's great. But so the question is, so let's say we do that. Let's say we put it so it'd have to be in November, right, on the November ballot. If for some reason next year, you know, we've talked about Medicare, Medicaid changes that could sink it anyway. So
it could be, though, Mark,
yeah.
in the next year's budget.
The following year, yeah. Because we did want to, right? I think
See
we
what
all,
you do.
yeah, we did kind of agree to give it a year with the new director, her assistant, and all the attention that, Mr. Healy and everybody. Yeah.
Form, I hope they make it.
Yeah.
Just don't want to tie our hands.
Right. No, I agree.
I agree with you, Charlie.
We're,
I do not disagree.
we're on the same page. It's just, I think we've made that decision. We're going to hopefully get it at least even. I mean, they may not make money, but as long as we can get them within their budget, that would be a huge win-win for us. We budgeted for $1 million and costing us $800,000 over the budgeted amount, which is no question unacceptable, but we've got to give them time to fix it. And again, like we said, if it doesn't work, then we've got to have another plan. So at least it's on the forefront, and we're paying attention to it, and we'll work to fix it. Yeah.
I think Charlie's right. I think we need Plan B here, and that if we come up with the scratch next year to,
Come up with it, yeah.
But if you recall this, the process, it was lengthy,
It was.
and we have to start pretty soon.
Well, for
I
November.
believe we have to open up.
Yeah.
the
Well,
fall.
for November, or for we're talking about we're talking
No,
about, we're talking
following
about
November.
Yeah, the
Oh,
following,
yeah.
the following, yeah, following November. Yeah.
You really need, probably about you gotta think of how you want to do it because, okay, so right now, 2019 municipal election, 2020 presidential. You go back to 2021, which is what I think you might be thinking about for a municipal election, to have it on that ballot, if you're going out that far, is that you start in February. And you have to, form your group. They have to meet the whole bit. There's certain deadlines. There's a number of public hearings you have to have.
Oh, we
Yeah, do you remember all this?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
It was a fun time.
And then you have to
Influent,
have your questions by September. So for that November election, whether you push it out to, and I'm just saying, just remember 2020 presidential, and then 2021 would be another municipal. If you want to look at it in 2020, you can, of course, but you just need to know how you want to do that and how you want to think about it.
I mean, I thought we were talking about 2020.
Yeah.
Maybe, or are we
I don't
talking
know.
past that? I don't know. I mean, that gives them rest of this year and I guess most of next year. Doesn't mean we can't start with the process, and if they turn it around, we don't go. We can always back out of it, right? I mean, we don't have
Does the
to.
Charter Revision Committee limit its own scope?
I don't think they can, right?
The charter, once you appoint charter revision, there has been bills to have it limited, but it has not passed. This
But,
charter revision,
The question is, we appoint the committee, I understand they're autonomous, but then can they, within themselves, limit their scope? Not
Yes.
huge.
If they want to, that's the problem. We can't.
Yeah.
We can ask them to do it, but they're going to do what they're going to do. But that's the only option we have is to.
and you have had charter revision commissions here who have been very narrow in their scope. That's very, I mean, I've been lucky enough, I guess, to be the liaison for a lot of them, but,
The last time.
I saw your hand go up.
Again, right? Again.
Real quick.
I sit in my hand. But yes, they have been very limited in their scopes, so.
Yeah, I think we have to put that on the agenda for moving forward, and we know Kate will be liaison. We know that. So, all right. Anything else? We good? So we'll go ahead and motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so moved. See you at their town council meeting and/or our meeting Wednesday. Thank you, everybody.